handed down from the NBA, and he will be suspended for 25 games.
I think the Grizzlies, those around the NBA, were bracing for the possibility it could have been even more. There's a 65-game minimum that players have to play to make All-NBA, to be MVP. He's out of consideration now, Ja Morant is, for any of those postseason awards.
The fateful day has come. Ja Morant has officially been suspended by the NBA, and it is a very, very controversial suspension, might I add. But we're gonna break it all down for you. I'm gonna tell you what the NBA is saying, what Ja Morant's reaction to the situation is, what the general public feels about this suspension, and whether I believe the suspension makes sense or not. But before we get to the content, we're back to doing $1,000 giveaways for 5 subscribers that turn on our notifications on this channel. We're gonna announce the giveaway winner on my community tab during the beginning of free agency. Now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. The NFL and NBA season are officially over, and I need something to hold me over until at least the NFL season comes back. So I've been playing prize picks for the WNBA and the MLB, and I've been fairly successful. It's a good way to get some extra action on games that I wouldn't really watch otherwise. I post my picks onto my Instagram story daily, and I've been hitting on a decent amount of them. And right now, when you use my promo code microphone, they'll double your deposit up to $100. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? I believe we're on an upload streak, baby. Let's get it going. For those of you guys that are just tuning into Ja Morant's situation for the first time, in order to really get why I feel a specific way about the suspension, you need to understand all the reasons why his name has been popping up in the media recently. Back in November, Ja Morant was considered to be one of the NBA's most marketable stars, a player that could quite literally carry the NBA's brand moving forward. I mean, I have to admit, as a person that is involved in NBA media, even though I do it independently on YouTube, there is a bit of a concern from me and a couple of my friends about who is going to be the face of the NBA once LeBron James leaves. People say it's going to be Steph Curry, but Steph Curry is currently 35 years old, and it is actually a cause for concern. Who's going to be the person that is going to generate new fans for the NBA moving forward? Michael Jordan did a remarkable job of this during the mid-80s all the way to his retirement. Prior to Michael Jordan's arrival to the NBA Finals were being shown on tape delay. Could you imagine that? Could you imagine if the NBA Finals were DVR'd? Yeah, that's what it was like. The NBA wasn't very popular back then. It was somewhat popular. It was trending upward. Following Michael Jordan, you had Kobe Bryant. After that, you had LeBron James. Obviously, there were stars during those eras as well, but it is a very legitimate concern. And the hope was that players like Luka Doncic, Zion Williamson, and Ja Morant could shoulder the load once LeBron James and Steph Curry end up retiring. You might say Kevin Durant, but Kevin Durant turns 35 in about 3 months. So when the 2019 NBA draft came along, a lot of NBA fans were very optimistic about this draft class being the draft class that could carry the NBA moving forward. A draft class that mirrored the 2009 NBA draft that featured the likes of Blake Griffin, James Harden, Steph Curry, and DeMar DeRozan, or very similar to the 2011 draft class that boasted Kyrie Irving, Kawhi Leonard, Klay Thompson, Jimmy Butler. Because this draft class was star-studded. You had Zion Williamson, you had Ja Morant, you had RJ Barrett, who also had potential, but the top 2 players were supposed to be generational prospects. Ja Morant was one of the best consolation prizes you could have potentially received for not being able to draft Zion Williamson. And currently, it seems like Ja Morant is the best player that you could have received from this draft class. Since being drafted, Ja Morant has played in 248 games, Zion Williamson has played in 114 games. Hell, Zion Williamson's in trade rumors right now. We covered it in our last video on Zion. I'll leave it in the end screen if you missed it. On the basketball court, Ja Morant has been remarkable, going from averaging 19 points per game in his 2020 to 2021 season to making a leap to a near MVP level in 2021 to 2022. And it's not that crazy of an argument to suggest that the Ja Morant era in Memphis Grizzlies basketball is without a doubt the most competitive era in Memphis Grizzlies basketball. You can look at the grit and grind era, but Ja Morant's era is significantly better and it's way more promising. And the core is still relatively young, yet the Memphis Grizzlies are still a second-place team in the Western Conference. Ja Morant was reaping the benefits of being a superstar in the NBA. This man received a 5-year, $194 million contract. That could have been a 5-year, $239 million contract based upon whether or not he was able to make it to the All-NBA team this year. Things were clearly trending upward for this young man and this young Memphis Grizzlies team. And then in January, things got a little weird. The very first piece of information we received, and if you go back to my video back then, I actually gave Ja the benefit of the doubt here, was Ja Morant was accused of allegedly attacking a minor during a basketball game in July at his Tennessee home. There's body cam footage of the kid talking about the incident.
Finally, I was in my ear like that.
And you're talking about like basketball player Ja Morant?
Basketball player.
Okay, like Memphis Grizzly Ja Morant.
Grizzly Ja Morant, yeah.
So grown man just hit you in the face.
The allegations even suggest that Ja Morant may have punched the kid about 14 times. I will admit, originally, I gave Ja the benefit of the doubt. This man had a squeaky clean reputation, and I assumed that may have been a guy just looking for a bag. But then a month later, we got another report, and that's the fact that Ja Morant's friend, Devontae Pack, during a Indiana Pacers game, got into an altercation. Following that game, there was fear from Pacers security that there may have been a gun pointed at them as a result of a red laser trailing on them. One person said, "We felt we were in grave danger," because they feared retribution from those who confronted them earlier. And then we got another report suggesting that Ja Morant pulled up to the mall once to intimidate a security guard that didn't get along with his mom or had like some sort of disagreement with his mom. And then we got the ultimate news, the fact that one night following a Denver Nuggets Memphis Grizzlies game, Ja Morant pulled out what appeared to be a gun at a strip club. What's really funny is they claim that Ja Morant, one, had a lighter, and two, he was sober, which makes this even more ridiculous
because he's doing this while he's sober. He's doing this with a clear head.
There's a lot of gun imagery with Ja Morant, man. He would celebrate by shooting fake guns in the middle of games at his teammates, and the NBA would launch a whole investigation into this. What was the result of the investigation? Well, I thought it was a complete sweep under the rug. The NBA suspended Ja Morant for 8 games. Ja Morant had to go to therapy for 2 weeks, and he did a whole media tour where he apologized and said he was going to hold himself accountable, like this interview with Jalen Rose.
It's not who I am. I don't condone any type of violence. But I take, full responsibility, for my actions.
And at this point, we thought that the saga was done. We saw how big of a deal this was. Ja Morant was suspended for 2 weeks. You could make an argument that this, without a doubt, derailed his season. The Memphis Grizzlies could have been the team that made it to the NBA Finals, in my opinion, or at least made it to the Western Conference Finals. They lost in the first round to a 7th-seeded Lakers team with a ton of flaws. The hope was that Ja Morant may have learned from this situation, especially when the NBA just gave him a mild slap on the wrist. But here's where it gets pretty crazy. Following the Grizzlies season being ended, in a season that included Ja Morant saying in his exit interview that he needs to hold himself more accountable and not be a distraction.
On both sides, off the court, making better decisions, on the court, being locked in, even more.
We once again had a very similar incident. Ja Morant was caught, this time on his friend's Instagram story, dancing with a gun, or what appeared to look like a gun. Now, Ja Morant's camp tried to do damage control at this point, saying that it was a fake gun, but we all know no one's dancing around with fake guns. I mean, hell, I showed you in my last video what a fake gun looks like. Fake guns don't look like what Ja Morant had in his hand. See, this is a fake gun. You see the plastic end? You see how it's like a little white and green and just looks like a toy? This is a fake gun. This is a real gun. You see how it doesn't look like a toy, and there's a red dot sight on it. See the curved edge right over here and the safety and whatnot. You let me know. Does it look like Ja Morant was holding this or this? So that damage control clearly didn't work, and eventually we knew the NBA was about to bring the hammer down on Ja. For the next couple of weeks, Adam Silver would not stop talking about Ja Morant. I mean, during the NBA draft lottery, he brought it up, and the reason why this is significant is this is one of the most viewed NBA draft lotteries of all time. A lot of people were tuning in to see where will Victor Wembanyama go, and Adam Silver used that precious TV time to discuss a potential Ja Morant suspension.
Talk directly about the consequences first before we got to a subsequent potential to have done something wrong. We were very focused on the misconduct that was in front of us at the time. Most of our conversation was about how incredibly serious the first incident was.
But that wasn't it. He hyped this up quite frequently. Sam Amick even suggested that Ja Morant is likely facing a very significant suspension, as Adam Silver hints that he'll know his fate soon. The key word here was the fact that Adam Silver said that in assessing what discipline is appropriate, if that's the case, we look at both the history of prior acts, but then we look at a player's individual history as well. And I want you to pay attention to that line. They looked at Ja Morant's individual history as well. And the seriousness, of course, of the conduct, those are all things to get factored. It's not an exact science. It comes down to judgment at the end of the day on the part of me and my colleagues in the league office. In terms of the timing, we've uncovered a fair amount of additional information. I think since I first asked about the situation, I will say we probably could have brought it to a head now, but we made the decision. And I believe the Players Association agrees with us that it would be unfair to these players and these teams in the middle of the series to announce the results of the investigation. So this was during the NBA Finals. Adam Silver was doing Game of Thrones-esque cliffhangers during the NBA Finals. It wasn't just Adam Silver, by the way. This became a global story. Shams Charania went on the Pat McAfee show to discuss it.
Turn around the Grizzlies, AJ, that they're going to come down hard on Ja Morant, and that this is going to be potentially a serious suspension. We're going to see a more stringent penalty the second go around.
But he also would go on freaking CNN to discuss the situation.
I believe around the league and even around the Grizzlies, there is concern, there's belief that this is going to be a serious suspension that Ja Morant will be given if this investigation indeed shows that this was his gun. It's important to know this is not a leaked video. This is something that Ja Morant, people around him, are openly, publicly displaying his actions.
Now that you understand everything that has gone on from the very beginning to now, you'll understand why I'm a little confused by the verdict that the NBA has reached. So according to Shams Charania, who got this out to us 1 minute before Adrian Wojnarowski, the NBA is suspending Memphis Grizzlies star Ja Morant for 25 games, sources tell The Athletic and The Stadium. I know what you're thinking. I'm gonna give you all the info first and then we'll discuss this, because I'm as shocked as you are. Adrian Wojnarowski echoed the same sentiment. Shams continued to say, Ja Morant will be required to meet certain conditions by the NBA before returning to action for the Grizzlies and will be ineligible to participate in any league or team activities during his suspension. The league office found that Morant intentionally and prominently displayed a gun while in a car on May 13th, the second such occurrence over 3 months. NBA, Morant wielded the firearm while knowing that he was being recorded and that the recording was being live streamed. We have the NBA's actual statement right over here, guys. The NBA suspends Memphis Grizzlies Ja Morant for 25 games with conditions for reinstatement. The NBA announced today that the Memphis Grizzlies guard Ja Morant has been suspended 25 games without pay for conduct detrimental to the league. Morant posed with a firearm in a car during a live streamed video on May 13th, less than 2 months after he was suspended 8 games without pay for the live streaming of a video on March 4th in which he displayed a firearm while in an intoxicated state at a Denver area nightclub. Very interesting. I thought that he wasn't intoxicated. It looks like they're switching up on that. He was intoxicated. I actually think it makes him look better if he suggests that he was doing this stuff while under the influence of alcohol, because otherwise people are going to think that there's something genuinely wrong with Ja Morant. The league office found that on May 13th, Morant intentionally and prominently displayed a gun while in a car with several other individuals as they were leaving a social gathering in Memphis. Morant wielded the firearm while knowing that he was being recorded and that the recording was being live streamed on Instagram Live, despite having made commitments to the NBA and public statements that he would not repeat the conduct for which he was previously disciplined. On May 16th, Morant issued a statement taking full accountability for his actions. This is the statement that looks like he typed it up on ChatGPT. No, quite literally. He said, "I know I have disappointed a lot of people who have supported me. This is a journey and I recognize there is much more work to do. My words may not mean much right now, but I take full accountability for my actions. I'm committed to continuing to work on myself." Back to the statement. Morant's suspension begins immediately and will remain in effect through the first 25 games of the 2023 to 2024 NBA regular season for which he is otherwise eligible and able to play. He'll be required to meet certain conditions before he returns to play and will be ineligible to participate in any public league or team activities, including preseason games, during the course of his suspension. Morant's decision to once again wield a firearm on social media is alarming and disconcerting given his similar conduct in March, for which he was suspended for 8 games already. The potential for other young people to emulate Ja's conduct is particularly concerning. Under these circumstances, we believe a suspension of 25 games is appropriate and makes clear that engaging in reckless and irresponsible behavior with guns will not be tolerated. For Ja, basketball needs to take a back seat at this time. Prior to his return to play, he will be required to formulate and fulfill a program with the league that directly addresses the circumstances that led him to repeat this destructive behavior. I know a lot of people are going to say, Mike, why did you give us this very long recap in the beginning of the video? It's because I want you to understand, after everything that we went through, after all of the things that Ja Morant was in the media for, the fact that this is his second incident, the fact that Adam Silver quite literally went on a tour saying, hey, the Ja Morant suspension is coming. After everything, he's only been suspended for 25 games. And the crazy thing is, this doesn't make a difference. What do I mean by that? Ja Morant typically misses about 20 games in every season. I mean, during the 2021 to 2022 season, his breakout season, he quite literally missed 25 games. He only played 57 games that year. I mean, last year, he missed 21 games. His sophomore season, he missed 19 games. His rookie season, he missed 15 games. This is so... I don't know. It's not necessarily a suspension that warranted parading around and saying, hey, we're about to suspend Ja Morant. It's gonna be crazy. Just you wait and see. He really messed up showing off a gun this second time. And I feel like that's the embarrassing part for the NBA. Because if you were gonna suspend him for 25 games, why not just say, we're gonna suspend him indefinitely and then bring him back after 25 games? At least then we would say, oh wow, Ja Morant really messed up. Now, Ja did give out a statement, and I will admit it's a little bit better this time than last time, saying, I've had time to reflect and I realize how much hurt I've caused. I want to apologize to the NBA, the Grizzlies, my teammates in the city of Memphis, to Adam Silver, Zach Kleiman, and Robert Pera, who gave me the opportunity to be a professional athlete and have supported me. I'm sorry for the harm I've done. The kids who look up to me, I'm sorry for failing you as a role model. I promise I'm going to be better. To all of my sponsors, I'm going to be a better representation of our brands. And to all my fans, I'm going to make it up to you, I promise. I'm spending the offseason and my suspension continue to work on my own mental health and decision making. I'm also going to be training so that I'm ready to go when I can be back on the court. I know my teammates are going to hold it down, and I'm so sorry I won't be out there with you guys at the beginning of the season. I hope you'll give me the chance to prove to you over time that I'm a better man than what I've been showing you. I want to believe it because, again, I'm rooting for him. I want Ja Morant to succeed. I really, really want him to succeed. But the amount of times I've heard Ja Morant say, I'm going to hold myself accountable, and then him not holding himself accountable. I mean, a week ago, his team quite literally claimed that this was a toy gun. You know what I mean? I don't see it happening. Do I think it could happen one day? Yeah. Do I think it's gonna happen like within the next couple months? No. And in this particular case, I just feel like the punishment was way too soft. If you wanted it to be 25 games, at least suspend him indefinitely and then bring him back after 25 games. Because through it all, this was a huge circus. Ja Morant is a repeat offender. He has other things going on behind the scenes, such as the other cases that we brought up with the lawsuit and the alleged beating of a 17-year-old, with his friend trailing a red laser on that security guard allegedly, with him allegedly intimidating a mall security cop, with him bringing out a gun at a strip club, and then dancing with a gun in his friend's car ride. And through it all, after this huge media circus, after this huge frenzy, you're only suspending him for 25 games? To quote Young Boy, who Ja Morant really enjoys, it make no sense. It honestly doesn't. I don't like canceling people. I'm not a huge fan of that, but I am a guy that believes that there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. Suspending Ja Morant for 25 games, I think, is relative nothingness, and I think it's a very clear indication of what the Adam Silver era in the NBA is going to be like. It doesn't seem like he's a strict disciplinarian at all. I'm not calling for one. I don't want him to be like Roger Goodell that like automatically suspends players or looks for reasons to suspend players, but I don't want him to be a doormat, and it seems like after another offense, Adam Silver is pretty much a doormat. For those wondering, Nike is not going to cut ties with Ja Morant. They said that they are pleased that Ja is taking accountability and prioritizing his well-being, and they will continue to support him on and off of the court. My apologies for the length of this video. I believe this is going to be the closing of the Ja Morant saga. Let me know what you guys think about Ja Morant's punishment in the comment section down below. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.